All right. Let me see how this turns out and let me see how this will be received. I don't really know what the plan for this podcast series is, nor do I know which sort of format I'm gonna I'm gonna do this in. Let me just adjust the camera. I'm just doing stuff here on the go, so if you're watching this and you're a little confused and a little, I don't know, weirded out, then know that I'm weirded out too, but I don't really care. Here's what I do care about though, and that is talking about the topic of persuasion. Let me just move the microphone slightly closer towards me here. There we go. In this home studio setup that I've got going on here. I think the overall goal for this podcast, or for this podcast series rather, is to let everyone who's watching know that, practically speaking, without persuasion, you're dead in the water. Persuasion is really at the core of making it as a human being in life. And here's what I mean by that. If you don't communicate with other people, if you don't ask for favors, if you don't lend people of your time, your efforts, your money, whatever, if you're living basically like a jellyfish, an amoeba, or whatever, some sort of animal that doesn't communicate with other animals, you're just going to be born and you're going to die. And that actually reminds me of something. That reminds me about why I don't like Richard Dawkins at all. Not because I don't dislike, excuse me, because I dislike him personally, but mostly because he's got that weird, he's got that weird take on life. If you ever read The Selfish Gene, one of the books of Richard Dawkins. By the way, if I'm looking away from the camera, it is because I like to look around and don't be beholden to any any sort of set view. Where if I'm looking directly into the camera like this, it's gonna be creepy and it's gonna be awkward. But basically speaking, I think my major criticism of Richard Dawkins is, or especially The Selfish Gene, the book, is that his take on life is there is no meaning of life. All that you're meant to do is to procreate, is being, excuse me, it's being born, it's to procreate, and it's then to die. There is no other meaning. That's a very, very dim and dark view on life. I i think a lot of atheists are going to get they're going to get sorely disappointed when they find out that eventually at the tail end of life, there is nothing for them because they didn't believe in a higher power. I should also note, by the way, that I'm indeed a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I can't wait to get to heaven in that regard, but I also can't wait to do more stuff here on planet Earth. I don't want to die yet. Nobody wants to die yet. However, if all there is to life is really for you to be born, procreate, and then die, then you effectively don't even need to communicate with other people, except for procreation. After you've done procreating, however many kids you have, and you've ensured that they've matured and that they're well functioning adults, there is nothing more in life left for you at all. And what a terrible way of living life. What a horrible way of living life. I can't even fathom anybody who would do that. I can't I can't even fathom that most people, or excuse me, that some people at all would choose to live that that destructive path of life, that destructive path of living their lives rather. See, when you're thinking about the very fact that You don't need to interact with any other human being. You don't need to go up there and call someone up or say hello to a friend or whatever. And all you really need to do is look at your screen all the time, because we all have screens, we all have phones, and all you really need to do is to tap a few virtual buttons, and you got food, you got clothes, you got technology, you got different stuff. I mean, the boxing bag behind me, this is like a boxing bag or a moving, excuse me, not a moving bag, but it's a firm bag on the floor. I just ordered that. And I don't even need to go to the gym anymore. I don't even need to build relationships in the gym to be able to train, because I've got like a home gym setup. Now, I know that this sort of like sounds contradictory to what I'm about to tell you here, but bear with me, because my home setup is not because I dislike being around people. It's not that at all. My home setup is due to the very fact that I treasure my time. I treasure my investments. I treasure my actions so much that, excuse me, that in the if I have the choice between staying at home and training so that I can get more productive work done versus spending a lot of time going to the gym, driving, getting changed, waiting in line for a machine or some sort of equipment to become vacant, waiting for the dumbbells, for the kettlebells, etc., to become vacant, then I'm going to choose training at home because it's more efficient to me as of right now. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to use persuasion, or excuse me, that doesn't mean that I don't want to have any relation with another human being, because relations are important. Human relations are important. In fact, I heard this, and I don't know if this is true. I believe it's true. I in fact am very, very inclined to think that it's all true, and that is how I think smokers who smoke, obviously, but who are social, tend to live longer than people who are lonely, sad, and depressed. Because human relations, even if it is just talking on the phone, hanging out with friends, the gentle touch on the cheek, hugging, kissing, whatever, they're so important, and they're getting even more important in today's social media age, or today's modern world, where everyone has access to technology. Well, but by the way, when I say everyone, I mean everyone in the Western world, because we live in the Western world, and this podcast, by the way, is predominantly aimed at an audience in the Western world, but it's going to be mostly about persuasion and how to apply persuasion, and also how you can apply persuasion in real life, or excuse me, also in business. By the way, if I'm looking away, it is because I'm getting distracted by a car outside, and the lights are really, really bright. That's it. I don't know why I have to justify myself for looking away, because nobody really cares. Listen, and this applies to me as well. When I'm watching another podcast, or when I'm consuming another podcast, I don't care whether the host or the guests are looking right into the camera or they're looking away, because most of the time when I listen to a podcast, I'm either driving, or I'm cooking food, or I'm doing some other household chores, or I'm doing something. Very, very rarely do I sit and concentrate and look into the screen. So that means I don't need another human being to look right into the screen, or into the camera, excuse me, like I'm doing now, because that's creepy. Let me just adjust the camera a little bit. No, I don't have a producer yet. Maybe I should get a producer someday. We shall see. Let me just tilt the screen a little bit here. I don't know if that makes any sounds or not, but whatever. This is actually pretty hilarious, because this podcast episode is probably all over the place, but I don't care. This is the first time I'm doing a long form episode format, so like I said, bear with me, and we shall see how this turns out. For now, though, I've disabled comments, I've disabled any reactions, I've disabled any chats, and I'll drip release these podcast episodes because as of right now, nobody can watch this except me. Then I'll gradually drip release these episodes as I see fit. And the reason for that is I detest, I loathe these reactions, these comments, these chats. They make me really, really lose my focus. They make me really, really distracted. And this is also part of the reason why I stopped going to the gym as well, because not only was it the time commitment, it was also the hassle of having to deal with all these sorts of retards coming up to you, criticizing your movements, criticizing the way that you're lifting the weights, etc., etc. It's so annoying. I just can't put it in words how annoying it is, really. And knowing that first and foremost, you don't look like you're in shape at all. So why are you walking up to me and criticizing my weightlifting technique? Number two, when you're doing the same technique, you look objectively even worse than me. So why are you qualified to sort of like lecture me on how I should lift my weights? By the way, notice how that ties into persuasion. If you for some inexplicable reason feel the urge to go over to somebody and correct their technique, totally unsolicited, totally without any sort of invitation, then who in the world are you, really? I mean, you're so full of yourself. You're so full of yourself, and you think you're the best in the world, and you think that everyone in the world has to listen to your takes, your hot takes, your opinions, etc., etc. Guess what? Nobody really cares. This is me displaying a bit of a tall poppy syndrome. And by the way, there are so many things that tie into persuasion. And by the way, as I'm talking, I'm developing more and more ideas. So I don't know if I'll pause and I'll start writing down stuff. I'm actually going to write down stuff as of right now because the tall poppy syndrome is really, really something that's worth exploring more. Let me see here. I'm just going to jot this down. Oops. That's typical. Every single time I'm trying to do something live, it always gets messed up. Let me see. Tall poppy syndrome and persuasion. Okay, there we go. So, by the way, if I haven't said so already, maybe I should say so. There is one link below the episode description in this video. That is for my email list. That's where I go into more depth about persuasion, about sales, about business, and how this applies to life in general. And how really you should do yourself a solid and invest in the topic of persuasion, because that's really the end goal of this whole pilot, is to make you and myself and everyone who's bothering watching this about the importance of persuasion. That's also why I'm calling it pilot, because, like I said, I have no idea how this podcast is going to play out. I don't even know if it's going to be popular or not. We shall see. Maybe in 5 years. In 5 years, I'll probably sit there and I go, "Oh man, I was so retarded when I did this first introduction video. Excuse me, this pilot." I don't really know. Maybe I should stop talking negatively about myself because, well, I'm doing my very best. And by the way, I'm speaking in my second language. You can probably hear that. Bonus points for anybody who does not know who I am or who does not know my identity, which country I'm from. That'd be interesting. We shall see. Maybe one day when I enable comments, I can open up for some, I don't know, guesses. We shall see. For now, though, this is like the long form format where I discuss, I riff off of ideas, thoughts, interactions, and experiences I've had in the past. So let's actually jump a little bit back to what I was talking about smokers and loneliness. That very idea is pretty sickening and weird. The very fact that smokers on average who are social, and most of them are, because smoking, and once again, this is through the lens of the Western world. If you're not from the Western world, that is America or North America, the United States, Canada, Western Europe, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, if you're not from that culture, or if you're not from those countries and you're not very well versed with how the culture in the Western world, in the Western world works, then you should know that smoking is sort of like on the decline. Smoking is bad. We're being taught and told. Smoking can kill. Smoking is also very expensive. Cigarettes are expensive. It's practically impossible to smoke anywhere except if you're, in any sort of public area. I remember back in the day when I was having some of my first summer jobs. I was working at this local power station, and my job, wasn't had didn't have anything to do with the local hydropower management, of course. I was just trimming fields. I was mowing the lawns. I was sometimes painting houses, whatever, all sorts of practical, boring stuff. But so it was sort of like me and the other blue collar guys, mechanics, carpenters, probably some plumbers, electricians, obviously, and that that's sort of gang, the blue collar guys, the blue collar workers. And so in that department, or in that part of the hydropower station, there was, there they had their canteen, their cafeteria, and next to their canteen, their cafeteria, they had their break room. Now, the power station was sort of like split into two halves. You had the civil engineers, the guys monitoring the computers and so on one side, or in one building, and adjacent was the mechanics building, the blue collar guys. That was where I was, with the blue collar guys. So the blue collar guys had their own pause room, their own break room, which was, I don't know, maybe 100 square foot, 10 square meters. Really small room. I mean, maybe you could fit some 8 dudes, maybe 10 dudes, but then you would sit really quiet. Here's something I always remember: every single one of them smoked heavily. So walking into that room every single morning was like walking in, it was like walking inside of a tunnel blast. If you ever, because there was smoke everywhere. The smoke was so dense you couldn't even see past. Couldn't see the end wall of the room. I mean, the first time I thought I was walking into a gas chamber. No joke. And eventually, obviously, that wasn't healthy. I was breathing in secondhand smoke. I was exposing myself for you know potentially damaging my lungs, etc., etc. It wasn't good health wise, because let's acknowledge that secondhand smoking is dangerous. Firsthand smoking is obviously dangerous. It's not good for your health. It's not good for your lungs. But if you sort of like disregard that, and you look past the very idea here when it comes to socializing and doing something together, then smoking is good because it connects people and it socializes people. and it makes people social. It gives people a reason to hang out together, kind of like going for coffee or going for a smoke, whatever. And so I'm telling you, the mood, the vibe, the atmosphere, it was top notch inside that small room every single morning. And I mean every single morning. Every single morning I would look forward to going to that room, even though it was uncomfortable sitting there in the smoke. But there was always somebody who had a story, who had a joke, who had something that they wanted to tell. And it was just dudes, no women allowed, politically incorrect jokes, etc., etc. You know what I'm talking about. If you've ever been in the blue collar environment, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Hanging out with the boys, Nowadays, that thing is gone, especially in my country. I mean, I think there are some cigar lounges left here and there, but by and large, you just can't hang out in public and smoke unless you want to go outside. And even when you're going outside, I think there are laws against hanging out on public grounds because you can't be smoking outside of public grounds because it's bad. And so I'm not here to judge or condemn any law that takes into account the fact that smoking is bad, because it is bad for your health or for your physical health. But maybe it's not so bad for your mental health, and maybe your mental health should actually take priority in these challenging times where everyone has a screen. Everyone has a screen. And when I'm riding the subway, when I'm riding the bus, when I'm riding any sort of a train, a commuting train, whatever it is, any sort of public transport, nobody's talking to each other anymore unless they know each other. Nobody's talking to a stranger on the bus. That's like an invasion of privacy. And it even affects me too. I'm not going to lie. I think it affects everyone. It does something to your mood. Back in the day, it was normal to talk to a fellow stranger on the bus. Hey, where are you going? Let's say that you're seated next to a stranger on the bus. Hey, where are you going to? Oh, I'm going to so and so place. Oh, what are you doing there? Oh, I'm going to see my sister's new horse that she bought because she loves horses and the old horse she had died. Whatever. Oh, I love horses too, blah, blah, blah. Then you sort of like develop this connection. And once again, I'm guilty of this myself. I think we're all guilty of this. And especially me, because I'm very, very paranoid. Very, very paranoid. I think the government is after me all the time. That's hardly any joke at all. I think the government is after me all the time. Even though, obviously, I don't have anything to hide. And I'm just a small fish in a very, very small pond. I'm not important for any sort of three-letter agencies or governments, but I'm still paranoid. Anyway, so I have this sort of like higher threshold, to talking to people. But it's the same thing in church. I go to church virtually every single Sunday that I can. It depends on where the location is. I actually stopped going to one of the churches, and this is also very, very important when it comes to persuasion. Notice how I'm all over the place. This is sort of like how I want to do this podcast, because I'm talking, then I'm bouncing back and forth between themes, and all of a sudden I'm finding myself trapped in the corner talking about something that I don't even know what is. Well, I know what it is, but I'm not very, very educated in all the topics, but I'm educated on this particular topic. Namely, going to church. See, there was one particular church that I frequented for, let's say, a year and a half, give or take. Not every single Sunday, but every Sunday that I had the opportunity to do so, once or twice a month. Let me tell you something. The mood in that church was so dark. It was so heavy. It was so bad. I'm not joking around when I say I think God had left the church. Really. There was nothing that pulled me back into the church. In fact, I was yearning to leave the church once I stepped foot inside. It just felt wrong. The people there were some of them were nice, but it was this sort of uncanny, fake, welcoming act that it felt like they put on just for the sake of pretending that they actually cared. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it was just something missing. The joy was missing. The connection to Christ was missing. The connection to the Almighty was missing. I mean, I can't say for sure that the devil had taken over that church, but it wouldn't surprise me because it was just awful. The preacher or the sermon, whatever you call the head of the church, the I guess the pastor of the church or one of the pastors, the head pastor, the leader of the church, he was this sly, slick, like he had something devious about him, dude. I can't exactly say what it was, but there was something devious about the dude that I didn't like, that turned me off, that wanted me to walk away. And so persuasion wise, that was horrible. Because those were the so that was the staff that I was talking about. But the attendees, the local churchgoers, oh my goodness. I don't know that I've seen such a miserable crowd ever. I I don't know what it was, but it was just wrong and it was just bad. And it was something right out of a cult. It felt like a cult. It felt like actually some sort of Satanism was going on there. I don't know. It was just bad. Conversely, on the other hand, the church that I frequent the most, that's where I feel that everyone is nice. Now, I'm not saying that they're perfect because they're really not. Sometimes it's harder to get to start talking to other people there. Or excuse me, sometimes it's harder to talk to strangers there than other times. However, in general, that other church is so much better. Because let me tell you something, the first time when I entered into that church, I saw a sign where it says, "Welcome home." Just taste that. Welcome home. And everyone seemed so friendly. Everyone seemed so happy to be there. Everyone seemed so relieved. Whereas in the other church, everyone seemed like they were obliged to go there. Like it was a duty. Like it was, I don't know, showing up for school on a Tuesday morning. And you had math in the first as the first lesson of the day. you know, the worst of the worst, and it's a dark morning in January. It's cold and dark outside, and you're gonna have to start out with maths and I don't know trigonometry and algebra, boring and difficult stuff. And no, mathematics is absolutely not my favorite subject at school. I actually sucked a lot at maths, but I made it through. Anyway, getting back to the point here. When I get that notion, like the inverse of that smoking chamber, like the inverse of that gas chamber where all the smokers were in my summer job, that's when I, take my hat and I'll leave. I don't want to be there. I don't see any reason to be there. No matter what they say, no matter what they want to persuade me to do, they can't force me to stay put because it's just a waste of my time. It's kind of like going to the gym and wasting my time, having to endure all the nonsense, all the nagging stuff, all the gym bros posing in front of a mirror and, flexing their muscles. It's just dumb. No, I prefer do it fast, get done with it, get to work. And so nobody can persuade me to go back to that dark church unless I want to go myself. There's plenty of places I don't want to go back to. I don't want to go back to my childhood school. I really don't, because to me that was a negative place. Let's talk about that actually, because maybe this could be sort of like the introduction of me and myself, me myself, Me, myself, and Irene, like in that movie. And we shall see how open-minded I'm about this topic, because I don't want to reveal too much personal information about myself. And frankly, I don't know how many people would be interested in hearing about my personal information either. But that's beside the point. The point is here, or the point is the following: I don't want to go back to my childhood school because I have bad memories from that school. Here's why: I grew up in a small town, and in my country, in my jurisdiction, in my region, small town means 700 people or less. Like everyone knew everyone. And when everybody knows everybody, and it's a small town, and it's a the town center is like this single street, two grocery stores, a church, and a library, and that's about it, and a gas station. And well, there was actually a flower store, believe it or not, there. But yeah, very, very small town. So anyway, that means that everybody knows everybody there. I had a bit of a short fuse when I grew up, and so I would easily get picked on and annoyed. And kids saw that, and of course they started picking on me because it was fun, because I had a short fuse, and they could piss me off very, very easily. So this developed into bullying. This escalated, and as the years went on, I didn't have any friends. I had buddies with whom I hung out, but that was only because my parents encouraged me and really, really forced me to go out and socialize against my will, because I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to hang out with those people because I disliked them. I disliked their company. These were the same kind of people who, while they weren't bullying me directly, they would deliberately turn their backs on me when I would need their help, when some of the bigger kids would bully me. Right? You know what I mean, right? You know what I mean, right? Betrayers. Traitors is what I call them. Now, there were kids, I was a kid, so I can't hold that against them in that regard. I don't hold any grudges against them in that regard. But I don't have any fond memories of growing up either. And so when you're in a small town and everybody knows everybody, there's only there's only one social gang of people. There's only one social peer group. It's not like at a bigger school where you have different peer groups, where you have, I don't know, the computer geeks, the sports kids, the emo kids, etc. You know what I mean? You have different gangs. There was only one gang where I lived, and I was socially exo- not exonerated, ostracized, really. I was socially ostracized. I didn't have any friends. Like I said, when I say I didn't have any friends, I mean it. I didn't have any friends. I I had some, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. I didn't have any friends in the town where I grew up. I didn't have like a buddy to hang out with, like a best buddy. I had friends, some relatives of mine, but they lived far away, like in other towns across the country. And I saw those people about two or three times excuse me, a year. So it wasn't like I had anybody to hang out with in my spare time. And yeah, by the way, I should notice that this isn't me trying to throw a pity party and feel sorry for myself. This is just me telling you where I'm coming from so that you can build some, I don't know, so that you can e- better understand my opinions and my ways of thinking. Anyway, getting back to the point here. I didn't have any friends in my hometown. I didn't have any buddies to hang out with that I enjoyed hanging out with. I didn't have any hobbies except reading books. Whenever I hang hung out with people, it was just old relatives in family gatherings and so on. And so all of that made me, and obviously, let me just say that me and my parents had a bit of a difficult relationship together. And yeah, let's just say that they could have done more than what they did. And I'll leave it at that. Anyway, that made me withdraw into myself and find solutions myself and trust in myself exclusively. And so this is where I'm getting at here. Trust is vital. And I'm looking into the camera as I'm saying it. Trust is vital to build relationships. Now, I've heard theories about how you could build trust more efficiently or more effectively. People say that trust can be built better by acting and being vulnerable. Like in, oh, I can't, I don't know, I can't complete this task without your help. I need you in my life. Without you, I'm incomplete, etc., etc. I'm exaggerating, but excuse me, you know the intention, you know where I'm coming from, right? I believe there is some truth to that. But at the same time, that vulnerability has to be true and it has to be sincere. Because I've seen too many people lie. I've seen too many people fake their vulnerabilities only to, I don't know, to get invitations and to pretend like they're popular, whatever it is. Most of these people are so afraid of being alone. They're so afraid of being left alone that they're coming up with these weird ideas of pretending that they're somebody else. I see it all the time. I see it even amongst adults. I remember so well these. Well, let me rephrase a couple of things here. When I said there was only one peer group at my school, I meant it. But there were different subgroups within the peer group. But these subgroups sort of like have the same the same main interest, the same principal interests did the subgroups have. And so I even saw that at school how most kids, or in fact, all of the kids, needed desperately to hang out with somebody else in order to feel accepted, in order to feel included. And, that's true when you're a kid. Because when you're a kid and you're socially ostracized, I mean, like me, you feel like you're the worst person on planet Earth. You feel like you're a failure. You feel like, oh, I might as well just, jump off a cliff or kill myself, hang myself, whatever. Obviously, you shouldn't be feeling that way. However, I see that very same pattern in adults. I see it in the professional work life. I see it, when I'm around other adults, how they sort of like have this incessant need to hang out with other people. Not so much because they want to, tend to their relations, but mostly because they want to be seen together with other people. They want to increase their status and they only want to hang out around people who have a name. I've seen that so many times. And that goes back to lack of self-belief. By the way, I'm all over the place right now with this pilot. I sort of love where this is going. At the same time, I don't really like it because I thought that I was going to have problems talking about stuff, but here I am, and it's been 40 minutes soon into the broadcast. I plan to keep these episodes at 1 hour or some such. We shall see. Maybe in a couple of years, I'll do 5 hours just like that. I don't really know. But I'm way more talkative than I thought. Anyway, getting back to the point here. Where was it? Yeah, It was the lack of self belief. When you have a lack of self belief and you don't have a mission, you don't have anything that motivates you to get up in the morning, then you're afraid of being left alone. I'm not, because I have a mission. I have a duty. I have so much stuff that I need to get done. I have a mission to fulfill. I'm not going to undisclose that mission. Excuse me. I'm not going to, yeah, no, disclose. Jeez, I apologize. It's a little bit late at night, and English is my second language. And at times, I'm gaffing and I'm messing things up. But yeah, I'm not going to disclose my mission because it's personal and it's private. But let me just say that building my own brand is part of that mission. And part of building my own brand is being authentic and unique and presenting something different than what most people are. You see, this take this broadcast for instance. This is me just sitting down in my gym wear. My hairstyle's a little bit messed up. I didn't prepare like a cool studio or whatever. I have a decent microphone and a decent camera, and that's about it. The technology is solid, but the environment or the surroundings, they could be better. Maybe I'll get myself some sort of a green wall or some other background eventually. We shall see. But for now, I'm content doing it this way because it it is unique and it is authentic and it's different to what else you're seeing out there. I'm not going to pretend that I'm Joe Rogan or I don't know, The Diary of a CEO or Modern Wisdom or some of the other bigger podcasts. I'm different than them and I'm doing something unique. Because let's say that I have a guest on, and I don't know, maybe there will be a guest appearance, maybe there won't be. Maybe it's just going to be me preaching. Maybe. We shall see. But if I'm having a guest on, I'm not going to do the whole introduction about, hey, so tell me about your background story. Nobody wants to hear that. At the very least, I don't. I want to hear guests being challenged. I want to hear guests thinking. I want to hear guests presenting something unique, something different. And that's why I present something unique and something different. That's why I talk about myself. That's why I pour out of my heart. I'm speaking from the heart. And so sometimes that's boring. Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes it's fun. Sometimes it's challenging. But irrespective of everything, it is unique. That's why I'm not going to use AI. I mean, I wouldn't know how you'd use AI to to do a podcast because I'm not very well versed within AI. I just lost my train of thoughts, but whatever. We'll find something new to talk about. That's probably gonna happen often. That I'm gonna lose my train of thoughts. Yeah, getting back to the whole thing about being properly grounded and properly believing in yourself. Because I grew up only being able to rely on myself, only trusting myself, because I could see how everybody would betray me, how everybody would turn their backs on me, how when things got difficult, people would walk away. That applied to people in my so-called peer group, these buddies who didn't help me at all, who gossiped, spread rumors. Just a couple of years ago, I actually heard a story about one of these guys in that peer group actually still speaking ill of me. And this person is in his late 30s. These are so low level shit people, you can't even believe it. Anyway, getting back to the point here. Yeah, I'm shaking my head. Because I didn't have anybody. I had to face every challenge, every obstacle, every difficult decision I had to face myself. And because of that, I developed the major confidence of walking in my direction, walking in my particular direction. And because of that, I'm not afraid of being left outside alone. I'm not afraid of being left alone. I'm not afraid of being shunned, if that makes sense. And because of this particular way of life, because of this distrust that I have in others, it's very hard to persuade me to do something I don't want to do. Very hard. And so think about what that means. If you're trying to persuade somebody who's so deeply firm in his or her belief that you're at an impasse, you can't do anything. This is why we have Christian martyrs. This is why, I forget the dude's name, the first Christian martyr who was stoned to death. I think his name was Stephen. I think. Or I think that's the English variant of his name. Saint Stephen, I think. Or the first martyr, I think. Because they couldn't convince him to disown Jesus Christ. Again, I'm getting back to religious materials here and scriptures. And by the way, if you're offended by this, if you don't like listening to me preach about the Lord and the gospel and the Bible and so on, then shoo, get away. I don't really care. Accept the Lord Jesus Christ as your Savior before it's too late. That's all I can say. May God have mercy on your soul. Father, forgive them because they know not what they're doing. Anyway, getting back to the point here. Persuasion works, but it has to work on somebody who has a need. Like Dan Kennedy, the marketer, said, everyone is walking around with an umbilical cord in their hands, ready to plug it in. Like an electrical cable that they want to, like a socket that they want to plug into a power outlet in the wall. These people who walk around with these umbilical cords, these power sockets, are people that you can attempt to persuade. That includes me as well, in certain aspects. Because whilst I'm not afraid of being left alone, or walking a different path than others, I too have needs. Everyone has needs. Social needs. This goes back to the smokers, the blue collar workers, who I'm absolutely certain had a much better environment, smoking and hanging out in that 100 square foot gas chamber than these white collar engineers and CEOs and whatever who, I don't know, stare into a computer all day long. The smokers persuade themselves, and the smokers persuade those around them to hang out, to have fun, and to do something different, and to offer something different. And so this is really where the rubber meets the road, where if you want to persuade somebody, you need to find their umbilical cord. You need to find their need. You need to find what it is that they're looking for and then give it to them. This sounds very, very easy, but it's true. But most people don't want to say what they're looking for. Or, most people, how do I word myself here? Most people no, not most people, but a lot of people aren't even sure about what they're looking for. And so it gets very, very hard to give to them exactly what they're looking for. Most people are so afraid of saying what they're looking for. In my case, for instance, I'm looking for people whom I can trust. But in order to get close to me, and perhaps this is something that I need to fix, it's probably something that I need to fix. But in my case, I'm looking for people that I can trust, who I can trust, excuse me, who I can let close to me. But that's very difficult because of my upbringing, because I saw betrayal after betrayal after betrayal after betrayal, because I got stabbed in the back so many times and I'm wounded by it. And I'm assuming I'm not the only one. And so my umbilical cord, I extend to, excuse me, to others who have that need to give. This is, I wanted to say it's like the male genitalia into the female genitalia, a rod going into a hole. Yeah, I know this is sort of like weird. I know it's a weird comparison, but hear me out. This is the umbilical cord. And so if you want to persuade somebody properly, you need to find out what their umbilical cord is. I'll be probably talking a lot more about this, and I'll be sharing my experiences. And when it comes to persuasion, as long as the umbilical cord that you're offering is excuse me, as long as the power outlet in the wall that you're offering to the extension cable. I know this is kind of a weird allegory, but if the power outlet is powerful enough, then it doesn't matter the price. Now I'm talking about business, by the way. And in fact, the higher the price, the more, you know, the more of a status it is to buy or to hold whatever it is that you're selling. Loyalty, for instance. Loyalty holds no price. For instance, if you want to sell me loyalty, oh boy, you're gonna have to go through so many obstacles. I'm gonna lay traps for you. I'm gonna give you opportunities to fail. And then because I've developed this perverse way almost of seeing people fall victim to all of my traps and be dissuaded from taking on the challenges. Somebody who actually faces those challenges head on and then what's the word I'm looking for here? I wanted to say persuade or persist. Those who persist, they're worth so much more than people who just walk away. Because in hard work lies results. And in hard work lies dedication. And in dedication lies, I don't know, I'm just rambling. I'm just mumbling. The point is, hard work and dedication pays off, especially when it comes to to convincing me. And so, I'm not unique. Why do you think so many hot girls are difficult to get? Because they've been burnt and scarred before. And because they're so sick and tired of all of these guys promising them all sorts of stuff that they really want, but then again they know that the guy's gonna cheat and that he's gonna have different, more than one girlfriend, etc., etc. I feel the same way. And that's totally that's not me talking about romantic love even. That's me talking about relationships. And so that's why some of these girls throw out these challenges. Oh no, you need to take me on a date. To take, excuse me, you need to take me on 7 dates before I want to fuck you. Or something like that. I don't really know. But yeah, if you just keep on working, and if you're firmly rooted, and if you have that mission, you will also pull others who walk in the same direction towards you and your company. And perhaps that is really the biggest persuasion of them all. Somebody who's so firm and rooted in their beliefs that he or she will execute according to their own needs and principles and wants, irrespective of what others think. That's very, very attractive. Those are the sort of people that I'm attracted to, actually. People who are iconoclasts, and iconoclasts meaning disruptors, people who just do things differently. That's what I'm not going to pretend that I'm some sort of a disruptor in the podcast space, because how many podcasts are there these days? I don't know, a million podcasts? How many episodes are there of podcasts? Probably tens of millions. What are the chances that most people are going to see this? Well, maybe eventually they're going to see it, because most people, because they're so addicted to AI, they run out of ideas to do podcast episodes, and they can't talk. And look at me, I've been talking for 1 hour, and I just sat down and I said, now I'm going to talk about persuasion, and I'm going to do the first podcast episode. I've been sitting all day. I just want to walk. So I'm going to end this thing soon, on top of the hour, I think. But basically, because everybody is so lazy, because everybody lack their own self-persuasion, because everybody, literally everybody in the, well, not literally everybody, but a lot of people in the podcasting space and a lot of people in the content creation space, they're so lazy, they outsource their thinking to AI. All they do is talk about generic, boring points. They don't go deep. They don't manage to persuade people, because when you go deep, that's when you persuade people. That's why I've told you a little bit about my past. And believe me, that's actually difficult. I don't enjoy talking much about myself. In fact, I want to talk about others. I want to talk about other stuff. I want to talk about, I don't mind talking about my experiences. I do mind sharing personal details, because I'm afraid that I'd be taken advantage of. Yet, by sharing some intimate details, stories that, or things that I otherwise would have had problems talking about, I become more unique, and you become more unique by doing the same thing. And you also become more persuasive. And so we've been touching on so many things in this pilot, about being authentic, about being deep, about being vulnerable when you're really, really, really vulnerable, about presenting something different, and about being rooted in your cause, about being grounded in your mission and what you're currently working on. I'm gonna wake up tomorrow, and I'm gonna be just as grounded in my mission, because tomorrow I've got 1 day less of life on this planet, and in 2 days I got 2 days less of this life on this planet. And so that motivates me to keep on grinding. That motivates me to keep on working every single day. And you should likewise be motivated. You should likewise be so concerned, be so preoccupied with getting things right, with fulfilling your mission, that you develop the aura and the charisma, like Ben Settle wrote about in a book. And I'm not going to say which book, because I'm not going to give away all of his secrets, but like Ben Settle wrote about in one of his books, when you have a mission, when you have dedication, you develop that look in your eyes that won't stop. that will make you last forever. That will make you so unique. You become persuasive in and of itself, or in and of itself. Your dedication and your loyalty to your mission will make you persuasive, because people are attracted to people who are unique. And I think that's a good note to end this first pilot, and we shall see how many more episodes there will be. I actually have an interesting and curious feeling about this. Like I said, we shall see. If you want to learn more about sales, persuasion, and business, and learn more about different ways of applying persuasion, do yourself a favor and subscribe to my email list. The link to do so is in the episode description wherever you're watching and are listening to this. And I'll see you there on the other side.